What damn, Logic's back with another one. Today we're going to watch a follow-up video by Dr. Mike. For those that don't know, Dr. Mike is a very popular and successful YouTuber who is actually a practicing medical doctor. Quite some time he's been on YouTube making videos just giving his opinion and takes on medical, all things in the medical field. And he had an appearance on Jubilee where he talked as a doctor going against, he did the Surrounded, going against 20 anti-vaxxers, whom of which said things like this.
Did you know that COVID has a patent and natural illnesses can't have patents? Did you know that every illness dated back to polio has a patent? The only thing that doesn't have a patent is the common cold. Did you know that Fauci funded medical schools to try to make the vaccine more, or not the vaccine, make COVID more deadly?
Understood. So what would be an example of the misinformation that you're referring to?
Like that vaccines cause autism?
So they don't cause autism, you're saying?
Correct.
At all?
Correct.
Well, that's news to me. Okay, what about death? Doesn't the vaccine save lives?
Correct, it lowers the death rate. It doesn't prevent it 100%.
Okay, so why are people dying?
Because it's not 100%.
If you, just by that alone, you can understand that that whole episode was just pure, just like egregious statements and claims being made and just off the wall people that are just pure conspiracy theorists, Christians that just don't want to believe in anything medical. He had to give his thoughts afterwards because I'm sure he had a lot of them. The amount of patience that man showed is just unfathomable, that he's somebody's God somewhere. Nonetheless, he's going to address the things he wants to address, and I did want to see it. I try to stop covering Jubilee videos because they're really weird with copyright and stuff, so they take and claim your videos or take them down completely. I just don't feel like dealing with them, so I just try not to cover Jubilee videos anyway. Before we get into it, make sure you leave a like, comment, sub, if not one, then all three. Now, let's get to the video.
Is there anything I could say today that would change your mind?
I'm just asking your opinion.
I'm asking you a question.
Probably not, because I actually read and study.
I would like to give you my knowledge, my experience, and what I've seen in the hospital system. But if you're telling me right now, no matter what I say, you're not going to change your mind, is there any value to that? I had a debate with 17 vaccine skeptics on Jubilee's Surrounded series, and it went on for 3 hours. It was an interesting experience for me. I learned a lot, as well as gained very valuable experience. But there were about 5 points that I felt were being repeated that I want to address today. Huge thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this video.
My third child, he got a vaccine that the doctor said were safe that caused him brain issues for the rest of his life, and he has arrested hydrocephalus.
Gave vaccines to the baby, and the baby had seizures.
My mother was vaccinated with the flu vaccine, and right after 3 days later, she received half of her face was paralyzed.
A through line through many of the conversations was people sharing anecdotes of someone having a negative reaction to a vaccine. I can't and I shouldn't really fact check that. I took everyone at their word. I thought everyone was discussing all of this in good faith. And then at the end of the day, vaccine side effects do happen. They're incredibly rare, especially serious ones, but they do happen.
You are 65 times more likely to be struck by lightning than to have a vaccine-related adverse event. HHS.gov.
In fact, I had to highlight that.
That's pretty interesting. 65 times more likely to be struck by lightning? And I'm assuming they just mean adverse, meaning like the side effect is so severe that it's notable versus like a headache or a sore arm or the sniffles, or you know what I'm saying? I'm sure that's what that means.
This during the episode, that when you compare how pharmaceuticals are treated in research versus vaccines have such a higher level of scrutiny because they're given to healthy patients. As opposed to pharmaceuticals, we allow a chance of higher rate of side effects because we're getting the trade-off of a major benefit. When someone tells us that they started experiencing a medical condition after getting a vaccine and they attribute it to a vaccine, I think you need to be very careful and think, yes, about correlation and causation, whether or not two things happen at the same time or one caused the other thing to happen. A great image representation.
I would like to know if all those people that claimed it was like they got the vaccine and then this, that, and the third happened. I wonder if they like went to somebody that confirmed like, yes, this happened because of the vaccine, or they just said it just to help their case, Or did this thing happen? Did they get the vaccine and then maybe like 7 months later they ended up with some type of issue, like versus following right away? Because what else did they do in the in-between time of these things happening, you know?
Is this. I'll give you another second.
Correlation
is
versus
this.
causation.
And also think about the natural incidents. For example, people who are 60 plus years of age have heart attacks. Now, if someone was to get a vaccine and then have a heart attack a week later, was this a natural heart attack or a vaccine-caused heart attack?
Right.
How would we know? We would study those who have gotten vaccinated versus those who haven't and compare that natural incidence versus the incidence of people who have had vaccines. And if that rate goes up, now we start getting worried, we start investigating, we issue warnings. We've actually issued warnings about vaccines in the past because of the careful monitoring we do as a form of post-market surveillance.
Risk versus benefit, correct?
And that's the thing. I wonder if he had the time and like the visual cues to show these people like what correlation versus causation and stuff, and how they take all these things into consideration, especially before mass producing the vaccine to millions of people. All these things are taken into consideration. If like they would change their mind, I feel like most of them wouldn't. The way these people were in that Jubilee was is like you heard the girl. She said, "No, you really can't change my mind no matter what you show me." I feel like a lot. She the only one that said it, but I feel like a lot of people probably feel the exact same way.
Maybe you can give your viewpoint, whether maybe you're for or against,
This guy was cool. He seemed like he was a good faith actor. And in the end, he was like, Dr. Mike actually changed my mind on some things. Maybe not 100%, but he said that. But he seemed to be in good faith the whole time. And his rationale behind how he felt just felt more honest. It felt like he was engaging with this more honestly than most of the other people.
Court ordering the children to be injected with something that there is no harm to. But now we're seeing actual harm with the vaccine.
Even though I still strongly disagree with him, he still thinks that the side effects are more of an issue than the issue if his kids actually got COVID, which was it was strange. But still, he had a little bit more logic behind his feelings. Just a little bit.
Die from the disease. They're dying from the vaccine.
Side effects versus benefits. Now, every time we do a medical intervention in healthcare, whether it's physical therapy, a surgery, a medication, a vaccination, we always want to think about the ratio of benefits to harms, and the benefits should always be outweighing the harms. And if we're not thinking about it, we're doing something wrong. So he pointed out how one of his daughters was getting a vaccine against his will because the mother of the child wanted the vaccine. But the reason the court sided with the mother was because they believed it was in the child's best health interest to get the vaccine.
Right.
He brought in some data, and he followed a pretty good and logical approach here. He said, why would I give my child this vaccine when in my area there have been 0 pediatric deaths? I didn't fact check that, but even if there were pediatric deaths, they were very low from COVID-19. Why would I give my child a COVID-19 vaccine when, looking at the data, the pediatric deaths from COVID in his area were quite low, if not 0, when in the VAERS database, it looked like there were thousands of deaths from receiving the COVID-19 vaccine?
And I ain't gonna say people, a lot of people that's anti-vax, and I know Jordan Peterson said this against Destiny too, like they think the VAERS database is these things on the VAERS means it actually happens to people. Like there's a chance that somebody could say, oh, I had my cousin had a heart attack after they took the vaccine, and then they'll go to the VAERS database and input that information. And then people can go see that information and say, look, all these things happened after people took the vaccine. But that doesn't necessarily track because anybody can go and put that information in. All the doctors and the people that's keeping track of this is looking for any type of pattern or consistency between what's happening, between when they got the vaccine and then what happens, or how much time elapsed in between those two. But just seeing that people post these things, you can't just say like, oh, the vaccine caused this. And so now it looks like, oh, some people posted like they got the vaccine and they died a week later. And he just thinks that means you got a greater chance of death than having some adverse reaction to actually getting COVID, which is just incorrect.
Now, following that logic, you could say, why in the world would you make a child get vaccinated? Well, you have to understand what the VAERS database actually represents. This is a vaccine adverse events reporting system. It's an open, passive reporting system. When we count the deaths from COVID, we count the deaths through the CDC legitimate system that's actually monitoring death certificates, sometimes overcounting deaths, but they're actually doing the work to verify those deaths happened. On the VAERS side, when you're talking about these thousands of reports, they're not verified. There could be duplicates, there could be falsified reports, there could be reports of things happening as coincidences. What VAERS is useful for is if we start seeing a pattern emerge that is actively investigated by the CDC and the FDA, and then we're able to catch vaccine issues happening in the greater public. It's one of the data reporting systems that we use after the launch of a vaccination program.
In Japan, they don't start their vaccine schedule, I believe, until 2 years old. Autism is almost non-existent.
So they don't cause autism, you're saying?
Correct.
At all?
Correct.
Well, that's news to me.
You can't have a discussion about vaccines without the topic of autism coming up. And there is some truth to the fact that autism rates have gone up. And people have tied that to the fact that children get more shots than they did in the past. However, this has been...
You know what's so weird about that argument? There's plenty of things we do more of than we did in the past. We probably eat more processed food than we did in the past. We consume more media than we did in the past. We have more interactions with technology than we have in the past. You know, it's like there's a bunch of things that we do more of now than we've done in the past, and they don't be like, oh, cell phones causing autism, or iPads cause autism. You know what I'm saying? Or eating more bologna cause autism. I don't fucking know, but you get my point. There's plenty of things, and they just choose vaccines for whatever reason, and they just don't even think, maybe we understand autism a little bit better so we can diagnose it more. Like, that's just, again, Occam's razor, y'all.
Very firmly established as correlation. And again, I'm going to show you this image because correlation does not equal causation. And I'm comfortable in saying this because there's been so much data disproving a causal relationship between vaccines and the rise in autism. There's been a study in Denmark with over 500,000 children. There's been a study in California, in the UK. There's been a meta-analysis in 2014 that included 1.2 million children. There's been 20 plus studies on the subject, and they all uniformly agree that there is no causal relationship. The only time it's actually been even discussed has been by a fraudulent study done by the person named Andrew Wakefield, who's been discredited. The study has been debunked, and he's actually lost his medical license. And that was done on only 12 children. So are you gonna trust the research of millions of children?
That is crazy. The person that gets discredited, lose their medical license, and did a small scale study that they lied about. That's what people hang on to say that vaccines cause autism. Like, this is insane to me. This is really a problem out here. And now you see measles is coming back. Why? Because some millennials have been tricked into thinking that fucking millennials and probably Gen X, probably some of Gen X, have been tricked into thinking that vaccines are harmful for some reason.
Across different international lines, or one dude who's been discredited based on 12 case reports. Oftentimes, misinformation out there can be amplified by the news media, which is why I'm excited to tell you about Ground News, an app and website that gathers related articles from around the world all in one place so you can easily compare coverage, get to the facts, and break free from manipulative algorithms. For every story, you get context on each source's political bias, reliability, and ownership, all backed by 3 independent news monitoring services. There's a quick summary of the story from the left, center, and right perspectives. Here's a quick example. Despite measles being eradicated from the United States in the year 2000, it has actually come back and claimed the life of a child in West Texas. With Ground News, I can see the coverage details
it's
of the
fucked
story,
up, man.
bias distribution, factuality rating, and compare coverage between different sources. You see, Ground News shows you blind spots or stories that aren't covered by one side of the political spectrum. This measles story only has 17% of the coverage coming from the right, meaning if you read only right-leaning news, you could miss it. That's how confusion spreads, but with Ground News, we can fight back. So click the link below to subscribe and get 40% off the same unlimited access Vantage plan I actually use. Okay, now let's take a look at one of the most frustrating pieces of misinformation I came across.
When it comes to the science, right? Back in the day, it was labeled misinformation if you were to question the validity of, for example, masks. But just out of last year, an epidemiologist, Tom Jefferson, came out with a rigorous analysis that stated that they had no effect benefiting people in terms of the reduction of getting respiratory illness, including COVID-19.
Almost all the participants took issue with the style of messaging that the CDC chose to put forward, and the FDA and the WHO to some degree, surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. I agree with their frustrations. I think that they didn't do a great job. In fact, they were overconfident at times. They were saying things based on weaker data, which is wrong for anyone to do, not just the CDC or FDA. They oftentimes relied on expert opinion without explaining that they were basing their decisions on expert opinion, which is the lowest form of evidence. Instead of explaining why initially we didn't recommend masks, they just said no masks, then they said masks, then they said masks, whatever. So I think the messaging wasn't done perfectly. That being said, it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback and point out every mistake they made given what we know now.
Yeah, I really hate that. They be like, oh yeah, the 6 feet thing was stupid. We didn't have to do that. Oh yeah, they forced everybody in the house. We didn't have to do that. Oh yeah, they forced everybody to get the vaccine and then we didn't have to do that. It wasn't that deadly. It's like, bro, we've never had something like this happen to us, to anybody alive right now. Like, can we not just sit here and act like we just knew all this information at the time where people are dying and filling up hospitals left and right? Like, come on. Like, yes, we knew, like, if you got it, you more than likely was going to live. But people was in the hospital fucked up even if they did live. And then you got people that need the hospital that's on the verge of death. They can't get in because there's so many people sick as fuck. Like, what? Like, let's not act like, because now it's like, well, maybe we could have let up a little bit, that we shouldn't have just tried to get the country back in some type of stability at that moment in time. I'm a little bit more forgiving for them trying to do their best to make sure that people can come out of this on the better end of it than like saying, it ain't that deadly, who cares? Like, that's kind of crazy to me.
It's a lot harder to make those decisions in the moment when people's lives are on the line, but we could still be critical so that we can learn in the future and do better if a situation like this arises. There was one thing though that the skeptics in the room said that got me pretty frustrated. They started saying that those who were accused of spreading misinformation, like the disinformation dozen, as quoted by one of the major newspaper outlets, were actually the divine dozen.
People say the disinformation dozen. I say the divine information dozen because they were kind of prophets when you look at it. If you look back at their old claims, a lot of things that they said came true.
If a broken clock says it's 3:15, when in fact it's 12:15, I'm not gonna give that clock credit
right.
when it turns 3:15.
Right.
I want it to tell me the accurate time when I ask it. Not
the broken clock is right twice a day trope. It's kind of, I hate it. I'd be like, yes, but would you ever use a broken clock? Like, do you want a broken clock? Like, it's such a stupid saying. It's like, yeah, broken clock. Like, stop. You don't want a broken clock. You don't refer to a broken clock when you need to know what time it is. I don't care if it's right at some point in the day. It's really not right. It's right for the wrong reasons. Y'all know I love that one. It's right, but it's wrong. I mean, it's right for the wrong reasons. And you don't want to refer to something that's right for the wrong reason. So don't tell me anything about a broken clock because you don't want a broken clock at any point of the day.
For it to end up turning out to be true. And the reason why this is important is because when you ask someone for an answer in the scientific community, they should answer you not based on what might happen in the future or their subjective thoughts on what might happen in the future. They should look at the data that exists now and make a decision based off that data. Those individuals who were accused of spreading misinformation made such a wide variety of claims that some of them ended up turning out to be true. But that doesn't mean we should, in fact, then begin to trust them.
We're not in the labs actually seeing the vaccine process or the clinical trials, so we have to just take the experts' word and trust it, right?
Well, when you fly in a plane, you're not in the cockpit.
Right. So we put our faith in that. So you would say that we just have to put our faith in the experts, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So this would require, number one, a good intention. So they have a good intention to help people, to make their lives better, and also they have to be ethical. Is that correct?
Those are reasonable things, yeah.
Okay, so if they fall outside of the purview of those two criteria, would you say it is reasonable for us to be skeptical?
There was also some awkward moments of people saying if I had faith that the people creating these vaccines were acting in good faith. But to me, that's interesting because when you call an Uber driver or you get a food delivery, you don't spend that much time thinking, are they acting in good faith? And both of those times, you're putting your life on the line.
Yep.
So I think you hope in a society that we live.
It's just a dishonest way to engage with it because they don't apply this standard in anything else in life. And I don't know what it is that people choose to do shit like that. Why do you choose to actively be disingenuous about things? Why do you apply standards to things that you disagree with but not to things you agree with? It's so strange to me.
Live in that everyone's acting in good faith, but it really pushed me to the question of how do I know that vaccines work and that they do what the pharma companies say they do? Well, there's a lot of research that goes into that that's verified by independent review bodies. There's preclinical research, there's animal research, there's human research, there's post-market surveillance. We actually have a vaccine safety data net that reviews millions of doses of vaccines after they've been given to many more people than the initial research. And guess what? With some very, very rare side effects, you don't see them in the research. But when you give it to exponentially more people, those side effects start popping out. And it's important to tell the general public about those side effects. And we do that. To make the point even more crystal clear, how do I know they work? Well, where is smallpox? Where's measles? Well, that's changing for obvious reasons. But where's polio?
Man.
Those diseases have been eradicated.
Gone.
And they've been eradicated
gone.
because of the invention of vaccines.
Gone.
In fact, I find it a bit hypocritical from this community who's in this anti-vax space to be critical of vaccines because they oftentimes blame our healthcare system for being so reactive and not preventive.
When I think about our current healthcare system, where I think it needs to do better is it needs to focus more on prevention rather than cures. Agree or disagree?
1,000%, yes, sir.
Do you know how we can do that?
Not through the vaccines, but
vaccines are preventive. We're doing the thing that you would want us to do, and yet you're punishing us for it. There was a good follow-up to this where people said, well, if we can have herd immunity, why don't we get rid of the flu and COVID? Well, that's because there are long incubation viruses and short incubation viruses. Long incubation viruses take a while to start causing symptoms in your body. And as a result, it allows your immune system's memory to kick into high gear and actually prevent you from experiencing any symptoms of that disease. That's why we've been able to eliminate polio, smallpox. These are long incubation illnesses. But it's near impossible to fully eradicate diseases like the common cold, the flu, COVID-19. Not only do they mutate, but also once you get a vaccine for them, you build up immunity for the time being that works for a few months, and then it goes into your immune system memory. When that virus reinfects you again, because it's a short incubation virus and the symptoms come on so quickly, by the time your immune system's memory kicks into high gear, it only is able to protect you from severe illness, hospitalization, death, but not those mild infections. That's why when you get the flu shot, it doesn't prevent all cases of the flu shot, it prevents severe illness. Same thing with COVID-19. If you haven't watched the entire debate, I think there's a lot of great takeaways. That's linked in the description. And I actually did a really cool animated video talking about the history of the polio vaccine and how it's actually fueled distrust in vaccinations as a whole. Click here to check it out. And as always, stay happy and healthy.
That was good. I like the fact that he was able to get more in depth with his takes and his takeaways from that Jubilee thing. And like he said, if you didn't watch it, you should watch it. Like, even if you're anti-vax, you need to watch it to see how crazy your side sounds about this. Like, it literally, even if you're anti-vax and you weren't on that show, hearing these people, the way they talk and the patience he displayed and just being honest with them, giving them raw facts about things, is just kind of like, it has to be eye-opening to some of you. Some of you, I think, can be saved. You want to save your loved ones, save yourself, save people around you. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not telling you that you have to get vaccinated, but what I am telling you is to look into this shit and not just what confirms your bias. Look into the truth of things, the facts of the matter, how much vaccines have improved the quality of life of many people every fucking year. And since we've eradicated some illnesses through vaccines, I think it's way more to the story than you're giving credit to. But if you made it to this point in the video, make sure to leave a like, comment, sub. If not one, then all three. And I'm going to catch y'all in the next one. Peace.